Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome, everybody. Hi, welcome. Feel free to turn your cameras on. I always love seeing who it is that I'm talking with. Thank you, Faraz. Hello. Hi, Michael.
Good morning, Noel. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Doing
And
great. Thank you.
all right, I see two Michael Russells. And while you look similar, you are clearly not the same.
I invited a couple of folks from my company to listen in.
I love it. Thank you so much. Hey, Lindsay. Hey, Odie. Good to see you guys. Hi, Morton, Shelby.
No, well, it's Sarah. We got a request to change the settings to record locally. Would you like me to do that, or do you just want to send the recording at the end?
We'll send the recording out at the end.
Okay, great.
So yeah, so let's go ahead and keep it with our regular recording. So we are at the top of the hour. We're actually a minute in. I'm going to go ahead and launch into our webinar for today. The topic of our webinar, of course, is the new ABCs of selling. And what we're going to cover today is why closing is harmful, what you should be doing instead, and the 3 best practices to stop closing and sell with trust. We will provide links to the recording and a copy of the deck for you in electronic format. It'll be a PDF, and you should get that probably tomorrow. We'll send that out to everybody who's registered. So just before we get started, I want to cover a couple of bits of housekeeping, if you will. The first is, of course, that we are recording this and we'll send it out to you, as I just said. Our plan today is for 30 minutes for the presentation. That's me talking at you. And then we have 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. Now, while we have it set up that way, feel free to jump in if you have questions while I'm talking through things. We'll just manage the time. I may ask you to hold questions until later if I'm worried about getting through all the content. Please turn your cameras on if you're game for it so that we can all see who's participating. And if you have questions that you don't want to interrupt to ask, just put them in the chat. We'll get to them during that Q&A. Today, we're not using any polling or any annotation. We will be using the chat feature. So feel free to keep that up and available as we go through the slides. Most of all, have fun. These webinars are a chance for us at Trusted Advisor to connect with you and hear what's top of mind for you, and also share some tidbits of knowledge and wisdom. Hopefully you find it wise on trust-based selling, developing trust relationships, and improving how we work with our colleagues and clients. So for those of you to whom this is new, Trusted Advisor Associates has been around for over 20 years. We were founded by one of the co-authors of the original book, The Trusted Advisor, Charles H. Green, founded Trusted Advisor Associates to help people just like you develop deeper trust relationships. Charlie went on to write a second book called Trust-Based Selling, and then collaborated with a colleague of ours, Andrea Howe, to write the Trusted Advisor Field Book. Now, I'm not stumping for the books here, although a lot of you may have one or more of these books on your bookshelves. It's really just to point out that this is the body of knowledge from which we draw. And there are many other voices out there talking about the area of trust in relationships. So please feel free to bring anything that you've been hearing or thinking about into the conversation. I promise it will only enrich our time together. A little bit about me for those of you who haven't met me before. I'm the CEO of Trusted Advisor Associates. Charlie Green, the founder, retired during the pandemic and graciously handed over the company to me. I have a background in consulting, in sales and sales management, and in client development, account management, client satisfaction, those areas. My history in the corporate America, I worked for Booz Allen Hamilton back when they were Booz Allen Hamilton many, many years ago, and then for a company called CSC, Computer Sciences Corporation. I do have an education. I'm currently on the East Coast of the US, sitting in Virginia. I did my graduate work here at the University of Virginia and also taught in the MBA program there. And I'm originally from St. Louis. So my undergrad work was at St. Louis University. I want you to think about, as we start today, think about a deal that you want to close. Something that you've been focused on. You've got, maybe it's a new client, maybe it's an existing client that you want to sell new work to. And just pull that chat up and type the first name of your customer in the chat. And make sure that that chat is set up to chat to everyone. And if you don't have a specific client in mind, that's okay. I encourage you, though, to think about the people with whom you are trying to build business as we talk through these concepts today. Excellent. It looks like most of you have someone in mind. So great. As we start this, how many of you have ever seen either the play or the movie Glengarry Glen Ross? And just raise your hand, nod, give some indication. Anyone? It's one of my favorite movies. And there's a scene in the movie adaptation, the play itself, which ironically was, it appeared first on Broadway 40 years ago in March. It's a story about a group of salespeople in the real estate business. And the basic plot line is that the salespeople are all obviously trying to increase their sales, and the company brings in a motivator from headquarters. And the motivator is withholding a series of leads on two property areas, Glengarry and Glen Ross. So those are actually property names. And throughout the movie, it's all about how the sales motivator is interacting with the salespeople and the techniques, the tricks, the manipulations that they are willing to go to increase their sales in order to get these leads. And the leads are supposed to be, the magic key. And there's a scene which was played it was played in the movie, and I'm completely blanking on his name, who played the motivator in the movie. But there's a scene where the lead salesperson is standing in the back of the room pouring himself a cup of coffee while the motivator is speaking. And he stops what he's saying and he starts yelling at that salesperson, "Coffee is for closers. Coffee is for closers." And the implication there is that closing is the only thing that matters. All you can do, all you should be doing, is focusing on getting that person to sign on the dotted line. And that's what creates this mindset around closing. In fact, that's where Always Be Closing, the ABCs of selling, comes to us. And the challenge with always being closing is that can do so much more harm than good in a sale. If we look at what's out there on the internet around closing sales, you can see here in less than a half a second, Google responded with almost 800 million responses. Now, some of that's just the power of the internet these days. These numbers are actually a lot bigger than the last time we did a webinar like this, which was only 5 years ago. Top of mind for the internet, or top for Google, is how do you close a sale? What are the techniques that work? What's it meant? What's the role of closing? What is a closing sale in a store? Doesn't really matter. Tips and techniques, closing phrases to use. And in fact, when we start to dig a little bit deeper, you can see that even within closing, there are multiple techniques. The assumptive close, right? Just treating the customer as though they've already made the choice to work with you. The option close. So would you like a red car or a blue car? The suggestion close. So why don't we proceed with XYZ? Or the urgency close, right? And you've all probably fallen prey to this at some point or another. If you sign now, then you will get, or I will do. Now, the fact that closing is top of mind for so many people in the sales world doesn't mean it has to be top of mind for you. So what is it about closing that is that's so dangerous for us? If we think about sales models, most sales models are transactional models. They're linear, and you have the option to continue doing them again and again, but they presume that there is a starting point. I've identified a lead. We go through a process. I qualify that lead. I explore the options, and ultimately I get to a close. The challenge with these transactional models is that they focus only on the short-term goal. They don't focus on the ultimate long-term results. You can see literally the process stops once we've closed the sale. They also assume a deductive process of decision making, right? All I need to do is make sure that my product fits into something that you might need. And that exploration phase is all about how can I say or do the right thing to convince you that you need what it is that I'm selling. Okay. So what's wrong with this? One, it fully misrepresents the way we make decisions. We don't make decisions deductively, logically. We don't have somebody come in front of us and lay out a path and suddenly say, oh, yes, of course, I need exactly what it is that you're selling. Instead, decision-making is highly emotional. We're wrapped up in what we're experiencing. We have this full set of knowledge that's sitting resident in our heads about why things are important to us, what it is that we want, what it is that we need to achieve. Most of that is never stated out loud. And so when I put myself in the role of the seller, talking to a potential buyer, if I really believe that I can simply logic my way into a sale, I'm ignoring the fact that there is so much more going on in that buyer's life. Closing is also focused on my efficiency, right? It's all about where I am in my process of engaging with that client. It's relatively disassociated from what the buyer's process is in making a decision to move forward with something. Frankly, it's all about you. Closing is about me getting what I want out of the deal, the negotiation, the best price that I can get, the most I can gain from the customer. It has the potential to alienate future customers. If I treat my customer relationship like that transaction, once I've closed that transaction, I have to go back to the start to turn that person into a customer again. And so the chances are that I may win one deal, but I may lose the long-term relationship. And similarly, it encourages me to stay in that short-term mode. I'm always chasing, what can I close this week? What can I close this month? What can I close this quarter? Finally, at the end of the day, closing rarely works. When I say to somebody, do you want the blue one or the red one? I'm not asking the right questions, and they're not making the right choice for them. So I want to dig into a couple of these. The first is the sales efficiency trap. Closing is presented as a key part of the sales process, and everything gets optimized around that. CRM systems drive towards this efficiency. Every time that we have a pipeline review and we look at what stage are we in, what's the probability of winning at this stage, the questions that we ask, that concept that every time I meet with a client, I should be getting something out of that, whether it's a commitment to the next meeting or information from them, or ultimately signing the deal, right? It's always about moving it forward in the pipeline. It also has the risk of simply qualifying the lead as being a goal, rather than thinking about the long term and what the client really needs. All I need to do is satisfy the requirements of my CRM. And finally, the marketing value of the extra 10 minutes that we spend with somebody when we're not focusing on closing the sale. If we're focused on closing the sale and we're trying to be as efficient as we can, once we get that okay, boom, that's it. Everything stops on our end. If we think about continuing past that close, there's a lot of benefit from even just an additional 10 minutes, because once the pressure is off of us, then we can really relax sometimes and have the conversations with the client, learn more about them. So the value of spending time beyond the close with our clients is really amazing from a marketing perspective, both from what we can share with them, but also from what we'll hear from them. The second thing I want to dive deeper into is the myth of short-term performance, right? You probably remember from this movie, the famous Gordon Gekko speech on greed. I like money and I don't apologize for that. I maximize every monthly incentive. If they move to weekly, I'll maximize that too. The truth, however, is that in strategy, as in relationships, focusing on the long term will yield better long-term results. And those long-term results start to show up in short-term metrics. In other words, you can think about it as a sub-optimization challenge. If all I'm ever focused on is what I can close in this quarter, I'm constantly on that treadmill of focusing on the quarter, and I have to regenerate new things to focus on for the next quarter. If I remove that short-term focus and only focus on the long term, there's kind of a one-time shift in the metrics. But ultimately, by focusing on the long term, those short-term results will eventually appear. The best short-term performance always comes from acting on the long-term interests of our clients. So what do we do instead of these transactional models that are all focused on closing? If we take this transactional model and simply create a circle, right? Make it into a loop. Now we're looking at a relationship model where lead generation leads to engagement, not qualification as in you're worthy of my time or you're not worthy of my time, but true engagement where we can listen to the other person and understand what it is that they're experiencing and what we need. We can work with them to help them see what the true opportunity or true challenge that they're facing is. And then we get their emotional commitment to solving that challenge or making that opportunity become a reality by envisioning an alternate future. Now, ideally, once they've made that emotional commitment, they understand the challenge or opportunity that's facing them, that results in a sale. But that's not the end of the process, right? That's simply the beginning, because once we have envisioned with them what the future is and we're working with them after we've made the sale, we continue working with them to understand what the next challenge or opportunity is. We create value by helping them see their world in a way that they may not be able to see it internally from where they are. So what's the difference in this? Think about your own experiences. If you meet somebody who truly has your best interests at heart, who seeks to understand your interests and offers advice that is actually useful to you, who's not just trying to get you to buy from them, who's focused on your timing, not their own sales goals or quarterly metrics, who is not just focused on making this transaction a reality, but really cares about the long-term relationship and is willing to be transparent and honest with you. It's natural to want to buy from them. So how do we do that? Instead of focusing on the close, first, focus on the relationship, not the transaction. Right? Focusing on the close is, by definition, a focus on that transaction. If you focus on the relationship instead and the value that you can bring to that client, to that person, then the transactions will take care of themselves. Listening, open-ended questions, paying attention just to hear what it is that they have to say, and acknowledging back, giving them the gift of truly being heard. And it's a lot of listening. It's so easy once we hear those words that we say, aha, this is the perfect fit for what it is that I have to sell. And so we jump ahead, we start suggesting what they should be doing before we've actually given them the courtesy or the respect of hearing out what it is that they're trying to change. Not only does this sometimes lead to us not solving the right problem or recommending a solution for something that is not their true issue, even if we're right, even if our knowledge and our background and our experience brings forward the right solution, they may not even believe us. Because if we haven't truly heard what they're experiencing and haven't let them know that we understand, how could we possibly have the right solution for them? So listening is more than just solving the right problem. It's also helping the other person be willing to take your advice or your guidance. 3, think about applying competence to the problem itself. Actually dig in, roll your sleeves up, work the problem with the client, rather than just telling them that you can do it or that you have done it. Talking about qualifications, talking about all the customers that you've helped in the past only gets you so far. Now, for a lot of people, this sounds concerning, especially those of us in consulting, because this is our value proposition. If I tell the client what I would do or how I would solve the problem, why would they need me? They'll just go off and solve the problem themselves. Interesting thing about that, you're an expert in what you do for a reason, because you've spent the time to hone your craft and to hone your skills. So the chances of the client, after an hour-long conversation with you about how you would solve their problem, being able and be willing to go off and try to do it on their own, are actually much lower than you might expect. And then finally, the envisioning piece. Truly help the client see what an alternate future might look like. What would their reality be in detail? Not just, I'll have more customers or I'll increase my revenue. But really, when I interact with my clients, they will have this experience. Here's how they will feel. Here's how my sales team's lives might change, or how my employees' work will be different. We'll be more efficient because we'll have more information, we'll have it faster. Really get detailed about what will be different in their life. As I said, this is where they get the emotional buy-in to move forward. So here are 4 things that you can do to stop focusing on the close and make sure that the focus is on the relationship. So rather than always be closing, the new ABCs of selling are always be curious. I want to focus first on this, that most of closing, I said, it's about us. And when we look at the trust equation, that your trustworthiness is a function of your credibility, what you say and how you say it, plus your reliability, no surprises, following through on your commitments, being predictable, plus intimacy, this creating a sense of safety for the other person so that they're willing to take risks with you. They're willing to open up and share about themselves. All 3 of those things build trust. That trustworthiness can be drawn down on or diminished or inhibited by our level of self-orientation. And our self-orientation is simply where our focus is. Closing is inherently high self-orientation. It's about what I want to get out of the deal. Curiosity shrinks that self-orientation. So if you're always curious, it allows you to stop being attached to the sale itself. It's like that old proverb of how they used to trap monkeys, and they would put an apple inside the trap, and the monkey would reach in and grab the apple. And when he made a fist, he couldn't get his hand back out of the trap. And the monkey couldn't figure out that if he let go of the apple, he could pull his hand back out of the trap. Being attached to the sale is like having our hand around the apple. We've now trapped ourselves, and the only outcome is getting that sale. If we can let go of the apple, stop being so attached to the sale itself, we can open ourselves up. We stop focusing on ourselves, and we can truly hear what it is the client needs. In order to do that, we have to accept that we might not make every sale, including the one that we're involved in right now. And we have to be okay with that. We have to truly let go of the focus on making the sale and instead focus on doing the right thing for the customer, whatever that might be. If we are truly aligned with what's right for the customer, we can find a way to work together. And if we're not, if that way to work together doesn't present itself, then it probably isn't the right thing anyway. If you can learn to trust that letting go of the sale will get you the sale in spite of not focusing on it, you'll also end up with more repeat sales and far more referrals. Not to mention, people will talk about you as being trustworthy. Right? So always be curious means stop being attached to the sale itself. Always be curious also means truly understanding where the customer is coming from. Try to avoid jumping in and solving the problem or answering their questions with what you would do or handling their objectives, right? Handling objectives suggests that when a client raises something that they're concerned about, our job is to convince them that that's not something they should be concerned about. It's patronizing at best, and it's damaging to the relationship at worst because it says, I don't value your opinion and I'm not willing to hear your perspective. Until the customer understands that you understand their concerns. And that means, again, a lot of listening, open-ended questions, paraphrasing back to them what you've heard, sharing with them what you believe they're experiencing in this, acknowledging if you think that they're frustrated or that they're somehow feeling held back. And even the good things, celebrating with them when there's something to celebrate. But let them know that you know where they're coming from. In other words, focus on empathy and understanding, not on being the expert and answering their challenges or their problems for them. Finally, always be curious means don't say your favorite closing phrase. Sorry, my cat is very interested in always being curious. It's a curious cat. Don't just default to your favorite closing phrase. So would you like that in blue or red? So if you were to sign today, I could throw in the following 3 things, right? Instead, just ask, what do you want to do now? Or where should we go from here? And then do what they say. Right? It's that simple. Now, just like everything having to do with trust building, this is simple, but it's not always easy. Mostly because our self-orientation manages to get in the way. But with these 3 ways to always be curious, right? Don't say your favorite closing phrase. Let the client know that you truly understand them, that you get where they're coming from. And then taking the time to focus on the relationship, how you can help them, not just the transaction. These are the new ABCs of selling. So I'm going to pause there. We're not going to go to takeaways first. Let's go to questions. And let me see, do we have anything in the chat yet on questions? Nothing yet. Okay, I'll open it up. Feel free to come off mute. Share if you have any questions about any of this. In fact, I'll stop sharing the slides for a moment so we can talk. Faraz, you asked about the trust equation. I will bring this back up. The trust equation is a core element of what we do here at Trusted Advisor Associates. Let me see if I can get back to that page. So the trust equation is a way of breaking down how trust works into multiple elements. So for most people, when we think about trust, it's this large, ambiguous, highly contextual thing. I trust somebody to do something, right? I trust Amazon to deliver my packages, but not necessarily to take care of my cats when I'm on vacation. And so as long as there's that ambiguity around trust, it's difficult for us to understand exactly how we can build trust in a relationship. So the trust equation, and Sarah, if you would please make a note, I'll send out in the resource email tomorrow, I'll send you some links to explore the trust equation. The trust equation breaks trust down into 4 key elements: credibility, which is our words, what we say and how we say it. It's based on our credentials, our experience. It's kind of our technical expertise, if you will, but it's also how we present that information. Reliability is about dependability, following through on the commitments we make. It's also about predictability. Do we operate in a way that people expect us to consistently? And then intimacy is it's a sense of connecting with another person, and it creates in them a sense of safety. So intimacy is about being able to empathize with someone, to let them know that you get where they're coming from. It's willingness to be vulnerable and to take risks, to go first so that the other person feels safe taking a risk in return. And then finally, self-orientation, our focus, which can be either attention-based focus. I have so much happening on my schedule that I'm not really fully present to what we're discussing right now. I'm thinking about what my next meeting is, what my quarterly goal is. It can also be motive-based. I think of all of the terrible stereotypes of the worst kind of salespeople, the manipulative, the Glengarry Glen Ross salespeople, the people who are willing to do or say anything in order to get what they want out of the situation. So that's the trust equation in a nutshell. And I will definitely send you I'll send you a link to explore that more. Thanks for asking about that. Other questions or comments? I'm curious to hear what you think about the new ABCs of selling. Let me ask this. As you think about that sale that you want to close, which of these ABCs are most important for you as you go forward?
Thank you. Thank you, Noel.
Hi, Jillian.
my
Good to see you.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Great. I just wanted to, and my apologies, I joined the session when it had started off, I think about 7-8 minutes into it, and I might have missed the introduction. But for me, this comes in is a timely discussion, being at that time in the fiscal year when we are looking at how far have we gone in achieving our targets. What services have we extended to the clients that we work with? And there's definitely I think it's natural to get that push to close a sale and before the year ends. I think it struck me as very important, and I know it's something we've known from the past, but it's good that you're reminding us about the myth of short-term performance, and the need to remember that the long-term focus would yield better long-term results. And from where I sit, we purpose to work with the clients for at least 3 years, and so we are constantly building trust and building long-term relationships. We've got clients that have been with us for 8 years thereabout. We've I think the newest in my portfolio is a month in, and just getting to remind myself that the long term, removing the short term and focusing on the long term is important.
Nice.
Focusing more on the relationship for the benefit of the long term is something that I will need to constantly remind myself, even when the pressure around targets is real.
Yeah, it's interesting, Jillian. I need to reach out to Stacy because we had a back and forth not too long ago, specifically around the annual goals. And one thing that you said that really stands out for me is it's not only resisting the pressure of thinking short term when those renewal periods come up, or when we're at the end of the year, we're looking at our annual goals. It's also intentionality throughout the life of the relationship to keep that healthy. And I remember from when I was consulting and selling selling IT programs, we would win a program that would be a 2-year program, and the sales team started thinking about that program again about 3 months before it ended. And there's just no way to make up for a year and 3/4 worth of, I'll call it, neglecting the relationship in the last 3 months.
3 months.
Yeah. So maintaining that perspective throughout the life of the relationship, not just when the deadlines are looming. Really nice insight. Thank you.
Well, Noel, from our experience, we've shifted quite a bit in the last several years. We've been fortunate. We're a construction company, so our world lives and dies by the amount of projects we get every year, as you can imagine.
Yep.
We are fortunate that we've got several customers. We have one customer we've been working with for 45 years. We have one customer or 3 customers we've been working with for over 15 years. And so a lot of what you've talked about today is what we've tried to do over the years. We would, obviously, the more relationships you have, the more repeat business you have, as long as you can perform and deliver what your promises are. But I think the one thing that I've learned, and that might be of interest to this group, is that when you do that, sometimes you learn that maybe something isn't right for your company as well. And if you have a cultural disconnect with your customers, or your customer is not invested in the relationship as much as you are, those are really red flags. And so in the long term, sometimes it's better to pass upon closing a sale for your company and for yourself and for all the people involved. So, being in a service business, we have a lot of challenges, and our world is very complicated. And so, it's always a challenge to make sure that we're delivering the best in class services that we can. So,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the long-term need and focus is what is paramount for us, because obviously we want to maintain our relationships with our good customers.
So that's an interesting perspective, Michael. I mean, that's got to be a tough. Are you Michael? You're Michael, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The
It's
other
got to be a
Michael
tough call
is
to make.
actually named Ken.
Ken, all right.
He
So
was in that new movie Barbie not too long ago.
oh, I think I saw you Sunday night on stage, Ken. But what you're saying, that's a tough call, right? When the client isn't the right client for you, or you're not the right provider for the client. And it's really hard to walk away from something like that.
Well,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, our business has become commoditized with so many buyers, and their competition is fierce. I mean, I'm not saying anything everybody else doesn't have, but there are a lot of Glengarry Glen Ross closers in our business, and our world has been individual transactions for so many years that a lot of folks have a hard time breaking that cycle.
Yeah. Michael, I'm curious. Odie Parkins, who was on earlier, he had to drop. Have you worked with Odie?
I have not.
Okay. I may connect you to Odie. Specifically focuses on the construction industry and building trust. If you're open to it, I'd just love to make the connection. I think you two would enjoy meeting.
Sure, that would be great.
What I heard and what you said that really stands out to me, one of the things that really stands out to me is the idea that thinking long-term relationship isn't just about the long-term relationship with this client. It's also your long-term relationships with the other clients that you have, and the need that you have to respect them and to be what you need to be for them, which may be challenged by some short-term closes. So that's impressive. Thank you. Other questions, comments, thoughts on how this affects how you see closing sales? All right. Well, we are just about at time. I am going to go back to the deck real quickly because I just want to get a little bit of feedback from you. First of all, I want to know what stands out most for you from this session. So if you would open your chat and just type in there, what's your biggest takeaway from our conversation? While you're thinking about that and entering your thoughts, if you don't mind, just a super quick poll. How helpful did you find this webinar? And Sarah, go ahead and launch that poll. They can enter their responses while they're also chatting their biggest takeaways.
Well, I'm having trouble finding the poll. Just give me a second. I'm working on it.
Okay, thanks. Great takeaways. All right, if you're still with us, Sarah's pulling up that poll. Let us know your biggest takeaways. And if you have other questions, please bring them up. I have a few extra minutes if anyone wants to stick around. Yes. Yep, Sarah, that is the right poll. Nice for us, that idea that it's emotional. Yep. All right, here's your poll. If you don't mind, just give us a little bit of feedback before you leave. And have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for spending time with me.
Thank you, Noelle.